Ever feel like everyone's chasing the same old tired ideas?
Yeah.
Like, where's the fresh thinking?
Right.
Well, today we are diving into Pattern Breakers by Mike Maples Jr.
Oh, excellent choice.
And, he's got this incredible track record, right?
Mm.
Early investor in companies like Twitter, Twitch. So he's got a knack for spotting those game changers, those real outliers.
Yeah.
And this book is kind of like his playbook for, not just surviving, but thriving in a world that's changing faster than ever.
It's not your typical startup manual, is it?
No, not at all.
I mean, he argues that the real key isn't just, following trends. It's about breaking them.
Breaking patterns.
Yeah, breaking patterns. And he actually ties that to some really interesting stuff about how our brains work.
Okay, so let's unpack that a bit. I mean, we rely on patterns every day, right? It's how we make sense of the world.
Absolutely, yeah. Our brains are literally wired to seek out patterns. I mean, it's how we navigate complexity.
Right.
It keeps us safe, helps us avoid threats. But this strength, it can also be our downfall, especially in the fast-paced world of startups and new ideas. That experiment, the invisible gorilla?
Oh, yeah.
You're so busy counting the basketball passes, you completely miss the giant gorilla walking right through the middle of the scene.
I remember that. And everyone felt so, blindsided afterward, like, how could we have missed that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It perfectly illustrates how our fixation on patterns can actually blind us to these massive opportunities.
Or maybe even threats.
Or threats, exactly. Especially in the business world, we're talking disruptions. Companies that get stuck in that pattern-following mode, they become the ones who miss the gorilla. Think Blockbuster when Netflix came knocking.
Oof, yeah, painful. But I get it. So if startups need to break patterns, where do they even start?
Well, Maples points to something he calls inflection points. And it's not just about change. Things are always changing. It's about a very specific kind of change that acts like a launching pad for something huge EE.
Okay.
So imagine the iPhone 4s.
Okay.
Not exactly the most glamorous upgrade,
Right.
right? But it had that super accurate GPS chip, the first of its kind in a smartphone.
Oh, right, yeah.
And all of a sudden, boom, location-based services, totally viable on a massive scale.
Which brings us to Uber, Lyft, the whole ride-sharing revolution.
Precisely. The iPhone 4's GPS, it wasn't the app itself, right?
Right.
It was the inflection point that made those apps and that entire industry possible.
Wow.
That's the game-changer mindset that Maples is talking about.
Right.
So now think about today. What feels like a small change in, I don't know, AI or maybe even that weird metaverse thing everyone's talking about, could those be the inflection points that unleash the next Uber or Airbnb?
Okay, that's making my head spin a little bit in a good way.
Yeah.
But spotting the change is just one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Right. There's also this idea of insights that he talks about.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. It's one thing to see the pieces on the chessboard. It's another to actually understand the strategy behind the moves in a way that nobody else does.
Right.
Take Airbnb's early days, right? Remember when everyone thought paying to sleep on a stranger's couch? That's insane. Who would do that?
Oh, I'll admit, I was one of those skeptics.
Right.
Hotels
Yeah.
just made more sense.
Right. But Maples argues that Airbnb's founders, they tapped into a much deeper insight about trust in the digital age.
Yeah.
They realized that online reviews, that whole ecosystem of ratings and profiles, weren't just some quirky feature. They were becoming the new foundation of trust, especially for younger generations. And fast forward to today, we barely bat an eye booking a stranger's apartment, across the world.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. But how do we make sure we're not missing those hidden in plain sight insights right now? I mean, looking back, it all seems so obvious.
It's tough, but Maples, he offers this framework for stress testing our thinking. So first, is your insight truly non-consensus?
Yeah.
This is something that most people would, disagree with or haven't even considered.
Right.
Second, is it right about the future, not just a clever idea today?
Right.
and most importantly, is it backed by those powerful inflection points that we were talking about? Those are your green lights.
And if not,
Back to the drawing board.
back to the drawing board. Keep searching.
Keep challenging your assumptions and digging deeper.
So we've talked about, spotting those inflection points, uncovering those non-consensus insights. But how do we actually put them into action? How do we take that leap from idea to impact?
Well, that's where Maple's concept of living in the future comes in. And it's not just about, predicting trends. It's
Right.
about really embodying that future mindset, almost like you're already there.
Okay, I like where this is going, so it's not enough to just Think about the future. You got to actually inhabit it.
Exactly.
Tell me more.
So he talks about two paths to doing this.
Okay.
One is solving your problem in that future world.
Okay.
And a great example here is Mark Andreessen and the early internet.
Mhm.
Back then, the internet was this clunky, user-unfriendly space.
Right.
And Andreessen, he experienced this firsthand, and he realized that somebody needed to make it easier to navigate.
Right.
Boom, the first user-friendly web browser. Mosaic was born. He lived in the future where the internet was for everyone. And he built the solution to get us there.
It's like he looked around that future world, saw a problem, and thought, well, somebody's got to fix this. Might as well be me.
Exactly. And then the other path Maples talks about is solving the problem of people already living in the future.
Okay.
So these are the early adopters, the ones pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Think about Todd McKinnon and Okta.
Okay.
He was at Salesforce when cloud computing was just starting to, gain some traction. And he saw firsthand the security challenges these early adopters were facing as they moved their, data and applications to the cloud.
Yeah.
Okta became the solution to their very specific problems.
Right. Which then, of course, became everyone's problem.
Exactly. Very smart. And in Maples, he actually tells this really great anecdote about Maddie Hall, who ended up founding this climate change startup called Living Carbon. And she wasn't even actively looking to launch a company.
Really? So what was her living in the future moment then?
So it started when she went to work with Sam Altman at OpenAI.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And she found herself surrounded by all these brilliant minds, who are pushing the boundaries of artificial intelligence. And it was like stepping into a different dimension where possibilities were being explored that most people hadn't even dreamt of yet.
And that exposure sort of sparked her entrepreneurial journey.
Exactly. Being immersed in that future-oriented environment, it just opened her up to seeing the world differently.
Wow.
While she was at OpenAI, she learned about this cutting-edge research on, get this, genetically engineering trees to capture more carbon from the atmosphere.
That's incredible. So it sounds like she kind of stumbled upon a solution before the problem was even, widely recognized.
Exactly. And here's where the inflection point comes into play.
Okay.
At the same time, corporations were under increasing pressure to address climate change, right? And they were willing to invest heavily in solutions.
Of course, yeah.
So Maddie, with her, front row seat to both the technological advancement and the shifting corporate landscape, she found herself at the perfect intersection.
She had the insight, backed by a powerful inflection point and the network to make it happen.
Yeah.
So that's an incredible story.
It really highlights how putting yourself in those future-focused environments can just open up these doors to opportunities you wouldn't encounter otherwise. But of course, having this game-changing idea, it's just the first step.
Right.
You need a team to bring that vision to life.
Right. And Maples talks about this being more than just hiring. It's about finding your co-conspirators.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
These are people who are just as passionate about the mission as you are.
Right.
The ones who are willing to challenge the status quo and embrace the uncertainty that comes with disrupting an industry.
They're not just along for the ride. They're grabbing the wheel with you.
Precisely. And Maples, he emphasizes the importance of shared values and a deep belief in the company's mission. These aren't just employees. These are your partners in crime, your fellow rebels with a cause.
So how do you find these like-minded revolutionaries? It's not like there's a co-conspirators wanted section on job boards. It's so true. Finding those co-conspirators, the ones who not only get the vision, but they're ready to weather the storm with you.
Yeah.
But it makes me think about those big companies, the established players. Can they cultivate that same pattern-breaking spirit, or are they just kind of doomed to be overtaken by the next wave of the disruptors?
That's the $1 million question.
Right.
And Maples, he dives right into this. He calls it the incumbent's dilemma.
Good.
And he acknowledges that, large companies, they're fantastic at being large, right? I mean, they've got their systems down, they're efficient, they're predictable. But that same strength, that can become their Achilles heel.
Yeah, it's like trying to make a U-turn in a cruise ship. By the time they see the iceberg, it might be too late to change course.
Precisely. Their size and their structure, which are huge assets in a stable market, those become liabilities when disruption comes knocking. But, Maples, he doesn't believe it's a lost cause for these companies.
Okay, good.
He outlines 3 paths that these corporate giants can take to inject that startup DNA, back into their operations.
Okay, so let's break down these paths. Where do they even begin?
So the first path is something he calls internal skunk works.
Okay.
And it's about creating these small, agile teams within the company that operate with a high degree of autonomy.
Okay.
Think of it like a mini startup, but inside the larger organization.
Oh, I like that. So it's like giving them the keys to their own speedboat while everyone else is on the cruise ship.
Exactly. And a perfect example of this is Lockheed's Skunk Works division.
Oh, yeah.
They were the team behind some of the most groundbreaking aircraft in history, the U-2 spy plane, the SR-71 Blackbird. And a big part of their success was this freedom that they had to operate outside of that, the usual corporate bureaucracy.
So it's about empowering these teams to, break the rules, embrace risk, and just innovate at lightning speed.
Precisely. The second path Maples talks about is strategic acquisitions.
Okay.
Now, this one's interesting because it's not just about getting bigger, it's about acquiring the disruptors themselves.
So if you can't beat them, buy them.
Exactly. A classic example is Facebook acquiring Instagram.
Oh,
Right. They saw the writing on the wall. Instagram was capturing the attention of younger users with this mobile-first approach.
right.
And Facebook's dominance in the social media landscape, it was under threat.
Right.
So instead of trying to compete head-on, they brought the disruptor into the fold.
And it turned out to be a brilliant move.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, Instagram continued to thrive
Yeah.
under the Facebook umbrella,
Yeah.
and its value, I mean, skyrocketed.
Yeah. It's a testament to, recognizing when a potential disruptor might actually be the key to your future growth.
Wow.
And then finally, Maples talks about partnerships for the future. And this one's all about collaboration.
Yeah.
Teaming up with companies that are already pushing the boundaries in ways that, you as a large corporation maybe can't do internally.
So finding that perfect dance partner who complements your strengths.
Exactly.
That can help you navigate those uncharted territories.
Exactly. And Maples uses the example of United Airlines partnering with Boom Supersonic.
Okay.
So Boom is, developing these new supersonic jets, which is a risky, expensive venture.
Oh, yeah.
Something that, United wouldn't necessarily want to tackle on their own.
Right.
But by partnering with Boom, United gets a front row seat to the future of supersonic travel. And it positions itself to be a leader if and when this technology takes off.
It's a high-risk, high-reward strategy, but in a world where innovation is moving at warp speed, sometimes those calculated risks are the only way to stay ahead of the curve.
Precisely. And I think that's a perfect note to end on. What's so fascinating about Maple's framework is that it's not just about startups or even corporations for that matter. This pattern-breaking mindset, this willingness to embrace discomfort, to challenge assumptions, it's relevant to all of us no matter where we are on our own journeys.
Absolutely. It's about looking at the world with fresh eyes, questioning the status quo, and just being open to new possibilities.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's a bit empowering too, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It reminds us that we all have the capacity to be pattern breakers in our own right.
We do.
It's about identifying those inflection points in our own lives and having the courage to act on them, even when it feels, uncomfortable or uncertain.
It's about embracing those what-if moments.
Yes.
And just seeing where they lead. So for all of you listening, what's one small action that you can take today to start living in the future a bit more? Maybe it's, exploring a new technology, connecting with someone outside your usual circle, or simply questioning an assumption that you've held for a long time. Whatever it is, don't just let the future happen to you. Step into it, shape it, and who knows, maybe even break a pattern or two along the way. That's it for this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful and maybe even a little bit inspiring. Until next time, keep those minds open and happy pattern breaking.